You know what, I probably wouldn't be surprised if you are still spending money on things that stopped making sense years ago. These are things that actually used to be the smart choice, and they just don't make as much sense as they used to. So today we're going to go through 6 different things that just don't make sense anymore, and I want to be clear, this isn't a stop buying coffee video. I don't want to lecture you on lattes. These are things where a legitimate, better option exists that could save you hundreds and potentially even thousands of dollars. Let's get into it. Okay, the first one, new cars. And look, I want to be fair here because there was an actual window where buying a new car made a lot of sense. And that time was right after COVID. The used car market had gone out of control, supply chains were broken, inventory was low, and used cars were somehow selling for similar prices as new ones. In that environment, buying new was actually a reasonable call. But that window is currently closed, used car prices have come back down to earth, and we're back to the normal reality of car buying, which is this. The moment you drive a new car off the lot, it loses somewhere around 15 to 20% of its value in the first year alone. So what should we be doing? In my opinion, the best option is to buy a car that is 2 to 3 years old. It still has most of its life left and you're getting it at a discounted price, sometimes up to 30 to 40% less than the original sticker price. If you really want a new car and you can comfortably afford it, that's a personal decision and I'm not here to talk you out of that. But if you're buying new because it just feels like the right thing to do, it's worth at least running the numbers first, because the used car market right now is about as good as it's been in years. Item number 2 is brand name medication. This one is genuinely one of the easiest swaps out of the entire list. Generic medications are required by law to have the same active ingredient, the same dosage, and the same strength as their name brand counterparts. The FDA mandates it. It is literally the same thing, just in a different box. And the price difference can sometimes be as much as 80 to 90% cheaper. We're talking $4 versus $40 for the exact same medication. The brand name version might look nicer, the packaging might be cleaner, but who cares what the packaging looks like? Next time you're at the pharmacy, just ask if there's a generic version. Most of the time there is, and most of the time it will be cheaper. So always go with the cheaper option if it is the exact same active ingredient. Next up, item number 3 is storage units. Did you know Americans spend about $40 billion a year on storage units? Yeah. 40 billion with a B. And look, there are situations where a storage unit makes complete sense. You're in between moves, you're dealing with an estate, you have a genuinely temporary situation, that makes perfect sense. But the key word there is temporary. What actually happens for most people is you rent it thinking it's short term, and then 6 months, a year, turns into 2 years, and all of a sudden you've spent more money on storing that stuff than the stuff is actually worth. You could literally just go rebuy those items in the future with that money you spent on a storage unit. If you currently have a storage unit, think about what's in there and if you even really need it. Item number 4 is multiple streaming services. I know, everybody loves their streaming services. The problem isn't the streaming services themselves. Streaming is generally a great deal compared to what cable used to cost. The problem is the accumulation of all the streaming services. Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, Disney+, Peacock, Apple TV, Paramount+. You start with one, then get another, and somehow you're paying for 4 or 5 of these things at the same time. The average household now spends over $60 a month on streaming, and some people are closer to that $100 mark, which is just the same price as cable again. What I personally recommend doing, and I've seen people save $400 to $500 a year doing this, is the rotation strategy. You subscribe to 1 or 2 streaming services, binge watch what you want, cancel, and then pick up a different one and continue that process. Yes, you might run into some spoilers here and there if you can't watch everything right away when it comes out, but these savings can be significant. In my eyes, it is totally worth it to rotate these services. Item number 5 is the newest smartphone every single year. This one might be hard for some people, but the new smartphone upgrade cycle every year made a lot of sense in 2012. The cameras were getting dramatically better, the processors were night and day difference. Each generation was a genuinely meaningful leap from the previous one. But in today's world, that's just not the case anymore. The difference between this year's model and last year's model is actually very small, and for what most people use their phones for, it really is not going to make a difference. And if you're upgrading every year, it's probably costing you anywhere from $800 to $1,000. And sometimes you're even financing this and you're not even able to pay it off before you're upgrading to the next phone. The option I recommend, and a lot of people probably don't even consider, is buy the previous year model. So that's just one generation old, and sometimes it's up to 40% less than the newest model, and it'll still be plenty fast for everyday tasks, and all smartphone cameras within the last few years are actually amazing for everyday pictures. So do yourself a favor and don't upgrade your phone every year. And item number 6, the final item, is paper towels. So this last one might be the smallest one on the list, but hear me out. The average household spends somewhere between $150 to $200 on paper towels every single year, and they primarily use them in the kitchen. While that number seems rather small overall, the alternative is to buy a pack of microfiber or cotton cloths for about $12, and they last for years. They're more absorbent, they don't fall apart mid-wipe, and you just throw them in the wash after you're done. I'm not saying to never use paper towels. Raw meat, certain messes, fine, use a paper towel. But as the default cleanup method, make the switch and save a little cash in the long run. And it's also better for the environment. None of these are completely life-changing on their own, but if you add them up, you might be looking at $1,500 to $2,000 a year just from changing these habits. If any of these hit home, drop it in the comments below, and if you want to see more videos like this, the subscribe button is right down there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.